this thing called Student Takeover. So it only makes sense for a student to come up here and talk to you about a student takeover. So basically how we kind of formatted this is we took a couple questions and I kind of just made some points about it. And so for the next 28, 30 minutes, I'm just going to be talking to you about this stuff because I feel like these 3 points we're going to look at really apply to the stage of life we're in right now and kind of what we're dealing with in our daily life. So just a couple questions. Who here has problems with their parents? Who here feels like their parents don't understand them? Right? Okay, so this first point is kind of coming, okay y'all. This first point is kind of coming from the point of view of why your parents, your guardian, or etc. might give you more freedoms in one area than the other. So this is your first point. Parents want to protect us. Your parents want to protect you. Newsflash, your parents kind of think that they can protect you from just about everything on this earth as long as they are living within the bounds of your own home. But sadly, they can't. Anyway, disclaimer, I am not a parent, so I'm not going to pretend I am. I don't know. Yeah, right. I'm not going to pretend I know what it's like to look at my child and just want to protect them from everything, just want to hold them close and just... So yeah, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, but I do know what it is like to be an almost 18-year-old who has parents and is still living in her house. I know what it's like to deal with the kind of pressures and struggles that come along with parents. So for the longest time when I was growing up, I always thought my parents, especially my mother, was crazy. And if you know me well enough, or you look at my Vine or things I put on Twitter, I'm always annoying my mom. I never stop. It's so bad. But two things. I like to annoy her, and I really like to juke her. There's a lot of times she has a truck, so we'll be sitting in the truck, and I'll put on a song, and I know what the song is about. She doesn't. So we're listening to the music, and she's, yeah, this is a good song, and she's like really liking it. And this happened with the Jason Derulo song last summer. And she's like, yeah, this is a really good song. I really like this beat. It's got nice bass. And then she listened to the words, and she was like, Emily, what is all this mess about wiggling? You shouldn't be listening to this song. This is really inappropriate. We're not learning about planets, like actual planets. Your sister's in the car. You can't listen to this. This is inappropriate. I don't want you listening to this. So basically, she felt the need to protect me from a song by Jason Derulo, and I always thought she was crazy for doing that because I do have a phone, and I still listen to it. Wow, Mom, good job. But point is, she always wanted to, still at almost 18, she still wants to protect me from like certain songs and certain movies. Like, I remember when I was little, in case you don't know me, and even people who know me don't know this, I have a 26-year-old brother. And he lives in Florida, and he lived with us until he was 18. And he graduated in 07, so he was going through his moody 2005 Eminem High School Music stuff. Mom, you don't understand me. All this junk, and he was constantly listening to Eminem, but like not on his phone because we didn't have those really cool iPhone stuff. He got like the actual Eminem CDs. And we don't really know what those are like anymore. And he also used this really weird thing called a CD player, like a portable CD player. Like, yeah, like the one you had to push the button and it opened, and you had to take this disc thing, and you had to put it in there and press it back down. It was like a totally manual thing, and I never wanted to use it. Right? Too much work. Like, what happened? Anyway, so he was always listening to Eminem and rap and like this, like rock. He always listened to Pink Floyd, and of course I never got to listen to it. So I always wanted to listen to my brother's music, and I was like, Mom, I really want to listen to Nick's music. He's so cool. I want to be friends with Nick and his friends. I promise you those words came out of my mouth. And point blank, my mom never let me listen to his music. In the car, my parents never let him play his CDs in the car because my sister was like 3 at the time. So I never got to listen to his stuff. But I didn't really understand. I was like, Mom, it's music. Really, it can't be that bad. After listening to Eminem and all of his music, I now realize why she told me at 8 years old that I was not allowed to listen to it. But anyway, point again, my mom wanted to protect me from that kind of influence. She didn't want me to be 8 years old and listening to the F word flying out of Eminem's mouth all the time. She wanted to protect my 8-year-old heart from those things. She wants to protect my almost 18-year-old heart from the same stuff now. She still doesn't know I listen to Eminem, by the way. So anyway, I know we can say all the time, my parents are so crazy. You know, my mom, gosh, Mom, I'm 13. You won't let me stay out until 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm a teenager. I can do what I want. My mom's so crazy for not letting me go see 50 Shades of Grey with my friends. Right? So, and that's kind of an extreme thing. However, it really, it shows that our parents don't give us certain freedoms in certain areas, and it'll differ for every person. Like, there's a certain franchise of movies that I haven't watched yet, and every single one of my friends has seen. And I'm almost 18 years old. I will probably watch them when I graduate, though. So, anyway. Our parents are not crazy. As much as we like to think that, they're not crazy, they're parents. They simply want to protect us. They think that as long as we're in their house, they can protect us, and that's not crazy. They may not get it right, but your parents are really reflecting the heart of God in that situation. You may not realize it, but they are. So when your mom says you can't do something or listen to something or watch something, she's protecting your heart from the material that you could be influenced by, the same way that God takes away people, situations, influences, and other things out of your life to protect your heart from those things, to keep that influence out of your life, to protect your heart. Your parents want to protect you. And on the whole topic of your parents maybe not getting it right, it says in Ephesians 6, 1 through 3, this is also a 10th commandment, by the way. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. It doesn't say it's wrong. It means this is right. Honor your father and mother, for this is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long on the earth. So basically it's saying, honor your parents, you're going to live a long time. It's pretty simple. You know, honor your parents. We're called to honor our parents. Even if they kind of miss the mark on it, even if you don't like the way they may withhold freedoms from you, if you don't like the way they tell you, no, you can't go out and do that with your friends, no, you can't listen to this, etc., etc. You may not like it, and they may be hypocritical about something, and they may totally miss the mark of what you think is right. But we're still called to honor them. Because if you think about it, you could be in a totally opposite situation. Right? You could have a parent who just generally does not care about what you're doing, right? And that might seem cool on the outside. Yeah, my mom totally doesn't care what I'm doing. I can stay out until 4 o'clock, and she'll be like, yeah, man, did you have fun? And at first that seems really cool, and then you stand back and you're like, wow, my parents don't care what I do. And for a lot of people in this room, that's the reality. The reality is sometimes parents don't care what their kids do. And you could always be in that situation if you're not right now. And I don't know about y'all, but I thank God every day that I am in the situation where I have two parents who generally, they always do, who genuinely care about what I'm doing, who my friends are, what kind of influences I have in my life, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching. Because I know I could be in the opposite situation. I could have my parents or guardians who just didn't care. There's people sitting in your row who don't have that kind of parent, that kind of guardian, or that kind of influence in their life. So advice is, be thankful for parents who protect you. They're there for a reason. They're really just protecting your heart. So, away from hearts and protection, that did not sound right. So, who here has a regular job? Okay. Who here makes money at all? Everyone can raise their hand. Okay. Who here speaks on stage like me? There's a very stark, okay, Chris, you don't count. There's a very stark difference between those two numbers. And this is what I want to talk about with you tonight. Point 2. As a Christian, everything you do is 3 words: full-time ministry. Whether you may believe that or not, every single thing you do is full-time ministry. And let's think about why we don't think that, okay? We have certain things, right, that are full-time ministry, but here's the thing. Ministry in and of itself, including full-time ministry, has a very fluid definition. Its definition is kind of what you give it, right? So, examples of modern full-time ministry. School. Wow, I really hate that place. However, school, that's not a place for full-time ministry. Your job, like I work at Barry Mangles and I see that as a place for full-time ministry. Don't hate on Barry Mangles, y'all. It's really good. Okay, don't hate. Mangoes. So your job that you may have, a modern ministry role could be if your parents or you might own a business in the future, running that business in a godly way, doing what you do with, God at your right hand. And we really don't see those types of things as full-time ministry for one reason. We assign specific roles to full-time ministry. And there's a problem with that because let's say I didn't speak. And I said that Chris was in full-time ministry. Say hi, Chris. Hi, Chris. So say I didn't speak at all and I was not called to speak. And I thought that people who were in full-time ministry were only people who got up on stage with a mic and spoke. Right? So by default, if I'm not speaking, that means I'm not in full-time ministry, right? And what if I want to be in full-time ministry? That means I would have to get up on a stage and speak. Now that's totally hypothetical. I'm up here right now. But so basically, assigning these roles to full-time ministry will ultimately leave you aimless, one, and it will also leave you unfulfilled. And that's really sad. That's putting yourself in a position where you're not in full-time ministry. When in reality, like the point says, everything you do as a Christian is full-time ministry. And I don't think we realize this, but there's there's boundless opportunities to be in full-time ministry. Who in here knows Tim Tebow? Oh, I know. Okay. Tim Tebow is a very famous football player. And there was a game a couple years ago that was broadcast on TV, and football players a lot of times wear eye blacks. And Tim Tebow decided to write John 3:16 on both of his eye blacks. And that night he got coverage, of course, and people all over the United States saw John 3:16. So a lot of people out there don't know Jesus. And so those people went on Google and they Googled John 3:16. You don't even know how many people could have met Jesus that night, who could have been shown who Jesus is, shown Jesus' love, or could have been saved that night. And I don't think Tim Tebow had that in mind when he wrote John 3:16 on his eye blacks. I genuinely don't think he thought of that. Truett Cathy, when he made his fried chicken empire, I don't think he thought that he would have this nationwide fried chicken empire, I know. I don't think he thought he'd have this, nationwide franchise with thousands of employees that spread into having this place called Wind-Shaped Camps where people would meet Jesus and get closer to Jesus and experience the heart of Jesus. I don't think he realized this. I don't think he realized that, man. That is full-time ministry. He used what he had, and he did everything for and unto God, right? And we're even told in the Bible that this is what we're supposed to do in 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatever you drink or eat, or whatever you do it all for the glory of the Lord. That's what's so important. It's not whether you're speaking or whether you're a full-time student or whether you work at Chick-fil-A and you work at Jesus Chicken. Man, Jesus Chicken. It matters what you do. It matters that you do it all for God and you do it for the Lord. That's full-time ministry. It's a fluid definition, but it's concrete in that. It is what you do for Jesus. And, I hear a lot of times people who they want to graduate and they want to go and be a full-time ministry. I just want to go to Africa. Well, what they don't realize is that you can be a full-time missionary in your school because there's people in your school who don't know Jesus. Groove, man. I see you. Shout out, man. So you don't have to go to Africa to be a full-time missionary. Another place where you can be in full-time ministry is your school, by simply sticking to your beliefs, by showing people the heart of Jesus, by inviting people to church. That's full-time ministry. You know, one of my best friends is Courtney Thor, and she recently just started college. And, you know, she left in August. She came back in September, and she was like, oh, Emily, this is what I've been doing. You know, I met all these people. I'm having such an awesome experience. And she went on to tell me that she found this awesome church she loves up at college. And that she had this group of friends, and she ended up just them going consistently with her to church. That is ministry, y'all. She did everything for the Lord, and she didn't even think about that would happen. I don't think Courtney thought, oh, I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to make all these people meet Jesus. No. But that's full-time ministry, because God placed people in her path, and she used what she could, and God used her, man, and she did everything for the Lord. And point blank, open yourself up to being used, and God will use you. You know, if you want to be in full-time ministry, that's what you have to do. You have to be open to being used. You have to be open to talking to the new kid at school, to talking about Jesus, to telling your testimony and everything, and God will use you, and you never know who God is going to place in your path, right? I mean, God is just omnipotent, and he's going to put people in your life. And if we say that ministry is simply showing the heart of God to others, that's really intense, right? Because you don't know who God's going to put in your path. And whether we realize it or not, you may be the only exposure to God that a person ever gets. You may be the only Bible a person ever reads. And I don't think that's something to take lightly. Do you? Yeah, it's funny. So yeah, you might be the only Bible somebody ever reads, and showing them Jesus is just full-time ministry. So anyway, who in here has ever sinned? And if you don't raise your hand, I guess that means you're perfect in your Jesus, right? Okay, so we're pretty much at almost a consensus. Just about everyone in here has sinned. Sometimes you might not feel forgiven for that sin, and this is where your point 3 comes from. You don't have to feel forgiven to be forgiven. You don't have to feel forgiven to be forgiven. You know, when you wrong a friend or something and you apologize and they forgive you, if you don't feel forgiven, then you think you're not forgiven, right? But that's not the case. You don't have to feel forgiven to be forgiven. You know, in this next verse, it says in Romans 23, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I don't know about you, but I think that's really comforting. I think it's really comforting to know that I'm not the only one who's fallen short of God's ideals for me, man. I'm very comforted by that. And, you know, this can go for really any type of sin. It could be for that curse word you let out the other day. It could be for what you did last Wednesday, you know, fill in the blank, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the thing about God. I feel like you sin, right? You sin, and then you want to be forgiven, so you ask God to forgive you. And I don't feel like God is that guy from the insurance commercial who's like, oh, I caught you $1. I don't think that's God. I don't think God's, you know, dangles forgiveness in your face and makes you work for it, right? I think God gives it. I think he's like, wow, you want to be forgiven? You're forgiven. And then you ask for forgiveness, he forgives it. And then after that, I think he just forgets it. So when you keep talking about it, he's like, I don't really know what you're talking about. You know, I wiped your slate clean. So ultimately, he wipes your slate clean. And I think that really shows the heart of God right there. So I just want to tell y'all a real quick story. And it's not going to be on here, so I'm just going to totally free verse it right here. It's in John, the book of John, chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. So there's this woman, and she's got cheating, right? I don't know if she's cheating on her husband or she's with a man who's cheating on his wife. But anyway, we'll call her the cheater. So the cheater gets caught cheating, of course. And so she's standing there like this, circled around by these men. And these men have really big stones in their hand. And they're not like, oh, let's go skip rocks on the water stones. They're like big, like miniature boulders, okay? They're big rocks, and they're just holding them in their big man hands. And they're basically like, we're going to stone you. Because back then, if you cheated, you could legally be stoned to death. And I don't mean like figuratively stoned. I mean literally throw stones at you. We can kill you according to the law. Death. You're right, Hadaway. Death. You're welcome. So this woman is standing here, and she has like this very like ominous group of men in front of her, and they're like, wow, you're such a whore. You're a hoe. You know, you cheated on this man. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to stone you. We're going to kill you, literally. And then Jesus walks up, and he's like, yo, what's going on? And these guys are like, Jesus, this girl's a hoe. You know, we caught her cheating. She's a cheater. And we're going to stone her. So basically, that's where we're at. So, yeah. So, yeah. And Jesus is like, yo, man, okay. Jesus is like, okay. And he's like, I'm going to lay down the law. He who is without sin can throw the first stone. So basically, he's saying, okay, whoever has not sinned just like me and is perfect just like me can throw the first stone at the sinful woman, at the cheater. And these guys are like, wait, I have sinned before. So they slowly start, dropping their stones, and they start realizing they really have no stones to throw because they've done the same thing, which is really a metaphor for our entire society. But that in and of itself is another entirely different message. So they're dropping their stones, and this woman is probably still really scared. She's like, wow, these guys are going to kill me. And Jesus is here, and he's like totally okay with it. And so ultimately, Jesus goes, yeah, haha, gotcha. You're not perfect. You can't kill her, basically. So Jesus walks up to the cheater, and he goes, there's no one here to condemn you, right? There's no one here to condemn you. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And he's like, you're forgiven. Go and sin no more. And that's really cool. God speaks to your potential and not your past. Jesus was speaking to this woman's future, her potential. He tells her, go and sin no more. Just go and sin no more. He's not talking about, wow, you cheated on this guy. You cheat on this guy, and, if you do it again, the fires of hell are going to rain upon you. He doesn't say that. He speaks to her future, because here's the thing. God doesn't condemn you. So why should we condemn ourselves? Because if we face reality, condemning us doesn't make us better. Condemning ourselves doesn't incite change, doesn't empower change in ourselves. It bogs you down, and it makes you think, wow, I'm such a horrible person. I can't believe I did that. Wow, who could love me? Jesus doesn't love me. I can never be forgiven. But that doesn't change who you are. And if we look at John 8:11, it says, go and sin no more. And reading it at first, it looks like a command. Go and sin no more. Do it again, and I'm going to come and get you. But it's really an invitation. Go and sin no more. You don't have to sin anymore. You don't have to live your life like this. You don't have to be caught in your old life. I've forgiven you. You don't have to live like this anymore. You don't have to sin again. Go and sin no more. And what's so cool about that is that at the time, I don't think that woman felt forgiven. I don't think she felt forgiven, and she was. And that speaks volumes, because you know what? You're forgiven. You're forgiven. And you're forgiven. And that's awesome. And that's Jesus.